Nice to see a full house. Thanks for showing up this evening. I have that when I wear that, yeah. Huh? No, he's got the tenant one. Yep. Good stuff looking good. The Tuesday, February 8th, 2022 meeting of the Eden Prairie City Council is now called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nice to have everyone out this evening, and if people are watching from home, thank you for joining us. Just have a brief announcement that I make at each council meeting of a public invitation to Open Podium. Open Podium is an opportunity for Eden Prairie residents to address the City Council on issues related to Eden Prairie City government before each council meeting, typically which occur on the first and third Tuesday of each month. And these open podiums occur between 6:30 and 6:55 here in the council chamber. If you wish to speak at Open Podium, please contact the city manager's office at 952-949-8412 by noon of the meeting date with your name, phone number, and subject matter so we can be better prepared for you. Open Podium is not recorded or televised. If you have questions about Open Podium, please do contact the city manager's office. Mr. Getchell, we have, I think, 8 proclamations and presentations this evening, so I'll turn it over to you to get started.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, that will definitely be the highlight of our night. We're going to begin with a life-saving award and an introduction of our police chief, Matt Sackett.
Mayor and members of the council, tonight we have the opportunity to recognize citizens Sidney Raley and Garrett Guzman for their actions and life-saving actions on December 18th of 2021 when they saved the life of a woman who was choking in the McDonald's drive-thru. So I'd like to call up Sidney and Garrett. They can come on up. Stay right here. All right. I have an award to read here for Sidney Raley and Garrett Guzman, a letter of recognition. On December 18th, 2021, Sidney Raley was working in the drive-thru window of the Eden Prairie McDonald's when she noticed the customer in the drive-thru window was coughing profusely. In an instant, Sidney jumped out of the drive-thru window, pulled the woman from the car, and started doing the Heimlich maneuver. When she realized she needed assistance, Sidney called to Garrett Guzman, who was walking in the parking lot. Garrett ran over and continued performing the Heimlich maneuver, ultimately dislodging the food from the woman's throat. By the time the Eden Prairie police officers arrived, the woman's throat was clear and she did not need medical attention. Sidney and Garrett's ability to quickly assess the situation, remain calm, and administer emergency aid in a stressful situation saved the life of the woman. On behalf of the Eden Prairie Police Department and community, I would like to award this letter of recognition to Sidney Raley and Garrett Guzman for their roles in saving a life. Congratulations. And we actually have Miriam Lubin here, who was the woman that they helped that night. So this is kind of a special night. So. And if you can all kind of stay up here, stand to the side. We do have one more award to give them. Mike Trulinger, who is a battalion chief with Hennepin Emergency Medical Services, also has another award to read. So.
Mr. Mayor and the council, thank you for having me here as well.
I just want to say, before I present this award, as a paramedic for a long time and a teacher of CPR and what we call the chain of survival, there's things in there like calling 911, getting an AED, and starting CPR, or in this case, clearing an obstructed airway. One of the most important chains, though, for me in that survival is people who act when just average, ordinary people, and I don't mean that in any demeaning way. You guys give us someone to work with, so when we show up, we look really cool in saving a life. But you are my heroes, and I mean that sincerely, because you guys give us something as paramedics to work with, and that is so important. Especially in this world with everything going on, you guys chose to act instead of not to act, and I so appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. What we have here for you tonight, in recognition of your helping others, this is called the American Heart Association Heart Saver Hero Award. And they both read as follows. In recognition of advancing the mission of the American Heart Association and emergency cardiovascular care through a courageous act in an effort to save a life. So I'm going to present Sydney and Garrett with a Heart Saver Hero Award. And before I forget, on behalf of Hennepin EMS, our entire department, and Chief Shear, who could not be here tonight, I'm going to award you also with our Hennepin EMS Challenge Coin. But challenge coins in the military and in law enforcement and EMS and firefighting have a lot of history. You did a good deed, and this challenges you to continue doing good deeds and maybe to pass it on to somebody to have them step up. So on behalf of us, and these are, if you're into sports, these are from when we had the Super Bowl as well. So, thank you, sir. And I'm so glad they can help you as well. It's great to see you here. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's always nice in this day and age to have such a positive event occur at this council meeting, so thank you. Mr. Getcho, second item.
Thank you, Mayor. You may recall at the last council meeting, we had members of the Human Rights and Diversity Commission up here to kick off our Martin Luther King Jr. Words in Action contest for many of our students in Eden Prairie. So we have, I believe, 3 students tonight that are going to announce the winners of the awards, and I believe we also have the winners here in the audience as well, and they're going to be sharing their winning entries with the City Council tonight. I know, okay, here comes Sam Griffin is a member of our commission. He's going to kick things off.
Good evening, Council. My name is Sam Griffin. I'm a commissioner on the Human Rights and Diversity Commission. I'm excited to introduce the second annual Words in Action contest. This is a contest hosted by the City of Eden Prairie, the Eden Prairie Human Rights and Diversity Commission, and the Eden Prairie Community Foundation to recognize the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We are particularly excited this year because the contest closely aligns with several key recommendations included in the Eden Prairie Race Equity Report, which Council accepted last month. As a part of the contest, Eden Prairie youth participants were asked to select a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and use art or writing to express their thoughts on the quote, as well as ways they can carry forward the legacy of Dr. King. We received a number of great submissions this year that were evaluated on quality and relevance to the theme. The review committee has selected 4 winners and 4 additional honorable mention recipients. The names of the winners and the honorable mention recipients will be posted on the city's Facebook page, as well as the website tomorrow. We are fortunate tonight to have the winners to join us to share their pieces with Council. We want to extend a thank you to Council for taking time to recognize the winners, the Eden Prairie Community Foundation for providing cash prizes to the winners and honorable mention recipients, and of course the Eden Prairie youth for participating.
Good evening. My name is Shivangi Mohan, and I'm a student commissioner with the Human Rights and Diversity Commission. So first up, we have Alec Boudreau presenting his submission, He was the winner for the 12 and under category.
Hi, my name is Alec Bedreau, and I'm a 5th grader at Eagle Heights Spanish Immersion in Edinburgh. When I heard about the Words in Action contest, I knew exactly which quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I wanted to do.
So we must have time, and we must realize that the time is always right to do right.
I wrote and played this piano song to show if I sit down and do nothing and wait for the contest to come to me, I would never give so much thought to this compelling figure. This phrase means to me that if I sit down and do nothing when I see injustice, I'm just as bad as the bad guys. I will carry on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy by doing my part, which is showing kindness, courtesy, and respect for other people.
Very good.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for choosing me to win this contest. I wouldn't have been here, and thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
coming this evening.
Great awesome.
Good job.
Our next winner for the 12 and under category is Akshay Ramanujam.
Hi everyone, my name is Akshay. The quote I've chosen is "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." This quote expresses that one bad thing can impact everything. The inner meaning is that if one person is unfair or wrong, everyone will get in that trouble in one way or the other.
Gotta love technology, though. It's always something, huh?
Well, that's as loud as it goes, apparently. So we will just be very, very quiet.
Hi everyone, my name is Akshay. The quote I've chosen is "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." This quote expresses that one bad thing can impact everything. The inner meaning is that if one person is unfair or wrong, everyone will get in that trouble in one way or the other.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Let's look at some past injustices such as slavery. white people used black people as slaves, and the blacks were treated unfairly. For example, they were separated from bathrooms, water fountains, restaurants, and even buses. That's where Martin Luther King Jr. comes in. He fought for equal rights and racial justice through peaceful marches, boycotts, and took the path of nonviolence. In one of most recent examples, George Floyd was denied his civil rights and was murdered unfairly by the police officer by kneeling down on his neck for 10 minutes.
Now, I'll share my poem that I wrote about injustice. One day, I walked down the street to see a sign that repeats, "Americans rule, everyone else drools." I turned to leave, but then I remembered, it's not right what they're doing. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I knew what I had to do. I go up to them cowardly, as I was horridly, and say, "That's not fair." But they didn't care, and they went on. I had to do something big, like frig, like sig, like wig. So I get ready for a speech to all races and girls and boys. Tell them all the hard times we went through, and the quote that Dr. King said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Everyone claps and cheers, but then that group appears and comes up to me and say, "We're sorry, we didn't know that people can be big, nor big or small, or black or white. We're all the same." I beamed with pride right inside and knew good things are coming. Let's look at the ways on how we can create awareness in our community against injustice. 1. Spreading awareness among young children. This can be done by teachers making children understand how hurtful it can be for kids who are looked down or treated harshly by their friends just because of their color. This can be encouraged by grouping children of different colors in teams. 2. Parents should teach their kids about injustices to people of colors in the past and also in today's world, and educate children to be kind and compassionate to their fellow classmates and friends. How there are many children who are deprived of even basic stuff as food and toys, and motivate donating stuff. 3. When you see some injustice, go up to the person and stop rather than being silent. 4. Get people to work against discrimination by peaceful marches like Martin Luther King Jr. 5. Communicate and get help from people in power in injustices in your community.
Good evening, everyone. I chose to create a visual art and a poem that could reach the community effectively, reflecting of Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." I thank the committee for this opportunity to share my thoughts this evening. I'd also like to thank my mom who supports me and motivates me in everything. As we all know, Martin Luther King Jr. is a civil rights activist. He envisioned a world where his children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. Let's honor him by following his dreams and making it a reality. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Hina Kazama. I'm a student commissioner on the HRDC, and I will announce the winners for the 8 to 13 category. First off, we have Ashrita Katemni.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ashrita Katemnini, and I'm in 8th grade. The title of my work is Justice Does Not Just Happen. I personally connected to this topic because I'm a girl of color myself with family who are immigrants from India. Martin Luther King Jr. hoped that one day all of God's children would be united. He had a dream that we would live in a nation where people, instead of being judged by the color of their skin, would be judged by the content of their character. He demanded an end to the indignity of segregation using nonviolence. Out of the many profound quotes that Dr. King said, one that particularly stands out to me is, "If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward." My understanding of this quote is that Dr. King is trying to tell us that we all might be at different phases of our lives, but no matter our circumstances, we have to do our part in progressing towards racial justice. However, our violent and unjust actions are pulling us backward on the path towards a country that keeps up the promises made for freedom, equality, and justice for all. Having hopes for a better future where everyone is treated equally is not enough. We have to move towards change. We have to make our efforts no matter how big or small. The youth of today can make a difference. At only 26 years old, Martin Luther King Jr. became one of the leaders of the Montgomery bus boycott, one of the most famous bus boycotts in history. He led by example and had many aspirations for us to live up to. Over the past decade, we can see that awareness has risen, but little has been done to implement our big thoughts and ideas. Like the quote says, if we aren't able to walk, then we should find a way to crawl. If we can't make big changes, we should find ways to make little changes. If we can't physically make changes in the world, we can spread attention. We can talk about problems we face and come up with ways to overcome the hurdles. We can discuss with our peers and discover ways to help. But we have to find ways to do our part. Dr. King also said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." That being said, we need to be resilient in times of trouble and despair. But being resilient does not mean forgetting what has happened and mindlessly moving on. It means to learn from our mistakes and act accordingly, making thoughtful decisions. We watch as many injustices take place in our daily lives, such as the brutal death of George Floyd, or representations of past discrimination people faced, such as the Delmar Divide or other scenes of segregation. For instance, the death of George Floyd negatively impacted many people deeply. After the event took place, we had conversations with our families and communities, thinking about how the police officer's fierce actions created so much distress to many people. On the other hand, if the officer acted thoughtfully and was less violent, the situation could have gone very differently. Though we can't change what has already happened, no matter how much we wish we could, history can be changed. All the things that haven't happened yet, all of the events of the future, are history in the making, history waiting to be made. There are many ways we can help bring attention to racial discrimination and injustice. We can look into and learn more about people inspiring change in this world. Youth can join clubs and communities supporting racial equality. Small things, like teaching a younger sibling or little kid about always being inclusive and fair, can also be notable ways to help do our part. To illustrate embracing equity, we can use a well-known visual, M&Ms. While the candy comes in many different colors, they are all the same tasty chocolate on the inside. Similarly, though we are all different and unique in our own ways, we are all God's special children on the inside. It is up to us to take action, make an impact, and do our best in an effort to make our world a better place where everyone is valued and respected, to make our nation a place where people can be anything they want, no matter their gender, ethnicity, or race, to keep up the pledge that all men are created equal with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As much as I appreciate the different colors in a rainbow, I am taught to believe that there is only one color, the color of humanity, and love and kindness alone are the answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next winner in the 13 to 18 category is Spandon Data.
Hi, I'm Spandon Data, an 8th grade student at Central Middle School. I'd first like to thank the City of Eden Prairie for organizing this event and recognizing me as a winner. I would first like to share the quote I based my essay off of. Make a career out of humanity. Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a better person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. Now, I would like to share a short excerpt from my essay. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a civil rights legend during the 1950s. Civil rights movement. Some of the most iconic speeches of the 20th century were written by Dr. King. We can remember Dr. King as a lot of things. I remember him as a man who was able to inspire the people around him with his moving words. He instilled the fact that we can improve ourselves. All the social changes we are seeing in the world can be traced back to Martin Luther King Jr. He was a real trailblazer and is someone we can all look up to today. His legacy lives forward, and I hope we can implement more of his teachings in our society. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Is that the conclusion? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, all the volunteers that came from the commission, but also all the winners. It means a lot to us on the council and staff, but also our city. So we appreciate all of you. Thanks for being here tonight. All right, Mr. Getcho.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next presentation is related to the Eden Prairie Liquor Operation Dollar Drive for Prop. And Timon Ayu, one of our liquor store managers, is here to present a check to Prop based on the Dollar Drive.
All right. Hello, everyone. We are here to talk about our Dollar Drive that we have with Prop. During the month, we've asked our patrons and our guests to help us out with giving money back to the community. And one way that they were able to do that is through the Prop donations. They gave $1 or more during their transactions. And we are here on behalf of them to present this check for $8,563.28.
Wow.
Yes. And we want to say a special thanks to all of our guests and patrons who came and helped us out with this. So.
Yeah, I should mention that Timon couldn't handle this alone. Jennifer from our liquor operation as well brought the check. And I believe Prop, the director, board members, friends, hangers on. Yes, Mayor. So you have an Empty Bowls proclamation. Empty Bowls is coming up on February 22nd, another annual prop event.
So I have a proclamation to read and then present you with the document. And then you may give your under 20-minute speech, I believe, is what we scheduled, if that's possible. So without notes, I get to read. This is a proclamation, a lot of whereas statements. Whereas Prop has provided food, support, and compassion to the residents of Eden Prairie and Chanhassen for over 50 years. And whereas Prop serves approximately 1,000 households, totaling 3,300 individuals each year. And whereas Prop is considered an essential organization by the City of Eden Prairie, local residents, the school district, the faith community, civic organizations, and businesses alike. And whereas the annual Empty Bowls event has served as a cherished community get-together, and it's fun, and it's for a great cause to raise funds, that's not in there, for Prop since 2010. And whereas the 2022 Empty Bowls event will support Prop's mission to provide service to our neighbors in need, now therefore the City Council of the City of Eden Prairie, Minnesota does hereby proclaim February 22nd, 2022. There's a lot of twos in there if you make all the twos get in there. 022220. Okay. Empty Bowls Day in the City of Eden Prairie and urges all citizens to support Prop. Ronald A. Case, Mayor, City of Eden Prairie. Go ahead and go for it.
I think they want to take the picture.
Thank you.
Do you want a picture?
We want to
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor Case and distinguished council members. I am so honored to be here to accept this proclamation. I'm Jennifer Loon, the new executive director of PROP. While I'm new as the ED of the organization, it's been around for a long time. PROP celebrated its 50-year anniversary this fall and has been there whenever someone in need comes forward. PROP is there to help. And Empty Bowls has been one of the ways that we've brought attention to that need and that people have been able to rally around the mission of PROP and to support everyone who comes to us for service. So unfortunately, with the pandemic, we are virtual this year with our celebration of Empty Bowls, but we've got a lot of fun things planned. Donations will be made when you do a carry-out order at several restaurants. We'll be featuring on our website. I've even contributed my favorite recipe for chicken wild rice soup and tell you how to make it, and a lot of other things. So thank you so much for the support. Every month, 1,000 people come to PROP for help, for food or financial supports. Of those 1,000 people, approximately 1/3 are children under the age of 18, 150 are seniors. We gave away over 500,000 pounds of food last year in 2021. So the need is great. We are there to serve and to support, and thank you so much for the great partnership.
Thank you. We have many amazing nonprofits in this city, and the list is, as we all know, is truly long. PROP is just right up there. It's the best. And we're so proud in Eden Prairie to have the PROP food shelf within our midst and all the other things that you do beyond food. So thank you. And thanks for taking over the helm, the reins of that organization. It's in great hands, I'm sure. Council, anything you want to add to anything? We've had a lot going on already. We're halfway through presentations, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you wanted to say something. It's okay, you don't have to.
I think it's an amazing night.
Yeah.
Just all the kids out there.
Yeah.
You know, their words. It's and of course, PROP. You said whatever.
Yeah.
You know, all the things you said about PROP. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm just filled
Thank
with
you.
gratitude. So.
Can I just say one thing? I just like
Absolutely.
to congratulate Jennifer on your new job and wish you luck. And it's a great organization, and everybody in the community I know supports it. So I know you're going to do really well. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Getcho, to Park and Rec.
You guys don't have to leave if you want to continue stay. It's okay.
Yeah, they know that they know that Jay's about to talk, so that can take a while.
Bye-bye.
Jay's got the next 4 items. I'll let him take those.
Got it.
Mayor Case, council members, it's my honor to inform you that we have been honored with the Minnesota Park and Sports Turf Managers Association Award for Field of the Year for Round Lake Baseball Stadium. And what I think is pretty significant about this, a couple things. Usually past winners are colleges and universities, so this is in pretty high caliber standing. But also, we built this field in 2007 and 2008. We celebrated it, some of you were there, with the 10-year anniversary in 2018. And so to have this award at the lifespan of this facility, I think is pretty remarkable. And not just the people that you know on our city staff, our park maintenance staff that are really talented and committed when it comes to things like irrigation and turf and keeping things looking in high quality, but we partner with our baseball association and also the high school baseball team. They help with the maintenance and help with the care of the facility too. So it's really a partnership, and there's so many people that deserve to be thanked for all of their effort on a day-to-day basis. They've done a great job. So it's really a unique opportunity to be recognized.
Do we get like a plaque, and then do we have a plaque? I know we have things all over our walls, but is there like a Park and Rec, like a ward wall?
There is outside our offices, many of them. We also, if you go to the community center behind the counter, as a lot of people are coming by there, we put some there. So we try to keep them out where people can see them and view them. Yes.
Nice. Congratulations under your leadership. So thank you.
I will pass that along.
I meant you too. I mean, I'm complimenting you.
Thank you.
So pass that along to
Thank you.
yourself. But we're really proud of you, so thank you.
Thank you. I will. The next item, a donation from the Eden Prairie Community Foundation towards cash prizes for the Martin Luther King Words in Action contest. So what you saw recently, the foundation contributed to that, the funds for the prizes. So we want to thank them for that contribution.
Nice. And we need a motion, Council, to accept this donation.
I'll move to adopt the resolution accepting the donation in the amount of $350 from the Eden Prairie Community Foundation for the Martin Luther King Jr. Words in Action contest.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. All right. Mr. Lotthammer.
Yes, this is another item of generous donations towards the Senior Center senior programs from Elam Shores. So that will help us with the Shred Truck Summer Barbecue and also the Golf Classic. So helping with defer some of the costs or add to the quality of the event.
Council, motion.
Move to adopt the resolution accepting the donation in the amount of $350 from Elam Source for various senior center special events.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Mr. Lotthammer.
Similar to the last one, this is a donation towards the Senior Center from Humana for $200. Part of it going to the June bingo program we'll be having, and then also to the Golf Classic.
So we say this about every meeting when we get these donations, but we are so appreciative, and a lot of people think that the city has like unlimited funds, and we don't. And all these donations help us stretch our well-managed tax dollars. So we just are very appreciative to all these groups that give us money. So council, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll move to adopt the resolution accepting the donations in the amount of $200 from Humana for various senior center special events.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. All right. As Mr. Narayan and Council Member Narayan had said, this was a really nice evening filled with gratitude. So we had so much positive going on.
So Mayor, can I just say one thing?
Please.
You know, we had the strategy session. One of the items I said was celebration.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about today, you know, the kids and the prop donation, all the donations and helping people to our community. It's truly a
Yes.
Great day, great evening.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I was not going to, I had forgotten, I think I'd wanted to earlier, but just to let the community know that we did have a workshop session this last Saturday from 1 o'clock to 3:30 or so up at the community center with senior staff, where we dealt with 2022 goals and strategized and had reports, and just a really positive time together. And I just want to tell the community again that our council, we don't share all the same ideas. We have different perspectives, but we are so filled with respect for each other, and we're doing so well as a council and with staff. And it is a very positive environment for us to serve in, and I hope, and we hear this back, for staff to work in. So we're so appreciative of our staff, and I'm appreciative of our council members. Mr. Getcho, let's see, I guess, do you want me to move right into the agenda question? Okay. Agenda, Council, are there any items to add to this evening's agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
And again, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed. All right, minutes. Anything that you wish in either the workshop or the council meeting minutes from January 18th? Any lines or edits or things you wanted to correct? If not, could I have a motion to accept both minutes from the two council, the workshop and the regular meeting that night?
Move to approve the following city council minutes. Council workshop held Tuesday, January 18, 2022. City council meeting held Tuesday, January 18, 2022.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. All right, consent calendar. Council, fairly long this evening. Any items within the consent calendar you'd like to ask a few more questions about, pull off temporarily? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar items A through P?
I will move for the approval of items A through P on the consent calendar.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. All right. Mr. Getchell, it looks like we do have one small, well, fairly, public hearing this evening.
We do. Thank you, Mayor and Council members. You may recall at a previous meeting, you approved first reading for development project, the Ellie. That's the 4-story mixed income apartment project on Eden Prairie Road on Lincoln Lane, where Lincoln Lane is not far from Highway 212. And so the second reading of that project will be coming back to you in a March meeting. And also, actually, if also at that meeting or a future meeting, you're also going to be considering tax increment financing plan. But tonight, we're asking that you simply hold a public hearing on that potential tax increment financing district. That would be a new TIF district number 25. And the Ellie apartment project qualifies and meets the criteria for this TIF district because the tax increment that would generate from the site would go toward the affordable units that are part of the project. So this is the case with several of the last few multifamily development projects. Paravel, Elevate are a few that were recently approved with the same type of tax increment financing district, where 20% of the units in the LE would be affordable to residents at or below 50% of the AMI. And that also, with our inclusionary housing ordinance, there'd be an additional 12 units that would be for residents at or below 80% of the AMI. And then there are 179 market rate units. So very similar mix to our other development projects. Again, all we're asking tonight is that you hold a public hearing, you close it, and then the actual bullet items are directing staff to actually prepare the TIF plans and the TIF development agreement that would come at a future meeting. I'll also mention that our financial consultant, we have a representative from Ellers. They assist quite a bit in these tax increment financing district projects, and we have our finance manager, and actually I get to introduce our new finance supervisor as well. So you remember Suka Cheever retired last year, and Tammy Wilson was promoted to finance manager, and we have a new employee, wave for us, Sarah Aschenbeck. She's our new finance supervisor. So this is her first meeting.
Welcome.
So Mayor and Council, we'd ask that you hold a public hearing, and staff or our consultant can answer any questions that you may have.
Before I ask Council if you have any questions, and then we'll open up to a public hearing, maybe just since there's not a lot of people in the audience, but there might be people listening from home, you mentioned TIF a lot, tax increment financing, and that's a concept, or at least a term maybe a lot of people are not as familiar with. And it's a tool that the state legislature permitted, I don't know what now, decades ago, but they allow a property, I'm going to make some numbers up now, but let's say the property had been worth $1 million, and after development it might be worth $5 million. It allows that development to capture the value of that future worth and spend that money now on infrastructure improvements that could not normally have been afforded. It has a but-for clause to it. This project would not work or would not be doable but for the additional money that would be spent on this now. So I don't know if anyone wants to add or explain that better, but I just wanted people to understand when we talk about TIF, cities around the areas, particularly the metropolitan area, utilize TIF quite a bit. And projects do too. It also gives the city leverage. If some developer comes in needing TIF, then we get also to get more possibly out of the project that we want. It's pretty much a win-win. Do you want to add anything to that,
no, Mayor,
Julie or Rick?
I think you said that well. I think the concept is the property still pays taxes. It pays taxes at a frozen value, and those taxes are put back into the property. In the case of Eden Prairie, The vast majority of our districts are housing districts, so that money goes toward offering affordable units and still building the properties to a very high level, where you couldn't, obviously, when this comes up many times, you can't tell the difference between a quote-unquote affordable unit and another unit.
In places like the Mall of America, they used their TIF, if I recall, to build all those bridge works and all the infrastructure that could not normally have been built. And so, yeah, it's a great tool. Just wanted people to understand a little bit more about that. Council, any questions prior to opening this up? You can always ask questions later as well. So this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to the redevelopment plan modification establishment of TIF district and TIF plan for this apartment complex called the Ellie? Seeing and hearing none. Council, why don't we go, let's see, we could go ahead. Are you prepared to make the motion? We could actually close the public hearing and go, or do you want some
I just have one question.
Okay, I think we're fine not closing the public hearing. We can make it all in one motion. So please, go ahead.
So these affordable units in this particular case, are they going to be in perpetuity?
I'll let Julie talk about what we have planned for the development agreement.
Mayor, members of the council, what is planned for the development agreement and the TIF agreement would include 20% of the units being affordable as a result of the TIF request, and then consistent with the recent inclusionary housing policy that the council adopted, there would be an additional 5% of the units affordable, and those units would be in perpetuity. The TIF units would be for the life of the district.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If you're okay, go ahead and someone make the motion to close the public hearing and go ahead and read the rest of the bullets.
I'll make a motion, move to close the public hearing and direct staff to include the redevelopment plan modification for redevelopment project area number 5, establish of TIF District 25, and adoption of a TIF plan on the March 1st, 2022 City Council meeting agenda, and recommend that the staff include the TIF plan and the TIF development agreement on the March 1st, 2022 HRA meeting agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Council, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Payment of claims. Any of the listed out checks, payments, expenses that you wanted to question? If not, is there a motion to approve payment of claims?
Move to approve the payment of claim as submitted.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Freiberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Narayan.
Aye.
Councilmember Toomey.
Aye.
Mayor Case.
Aye. All right. Mr. Getchell, we are down to the report of Parks and Recreation Director. Do I move it right to Mr. Lodhammer?
Yes, that'd be great.
All right.
I think he does have a presentation, Mayor, so I think he's gearing up for that.
Gear away.
All right, Your Honor, council members, before I get started with the presentation, I would like to recognize Mike Rogers, who's in the audience tonight. Mike is representing the cemetery board, but he's also someone who has for a long time cared for the cemetery, for the Eden Prairie Cemetery, which is what you'll be considering accepting tonight to come under city ownership and operation. So want to make sure that you know who Mike is and all he's done for the community, especially in very hard times. It's a position that takes a lot of care, and Mike's done it well and has had a really good reputation, so we appreciate that. So tonight we're looking at the potential transfer of the Eden Prairie Cemetery from the Eden Prairie Cemetery Board to the City of Eden Prairie. I'm just going to overview what their proposal is. But I also want to compare it both to Pleasant Hill Cemetery so you have an understanding of the operation. Pleasant Hill Cemetery has actually been operated and owned by the city for quite some time. And so there is that confusion from time to time that the Eden Prairie Cemetery is not the city's cemetery, which, as I'll show you in a little while, that's one of the benefits of having both of them kind of operate out of the same place. We've also done quite a bit of due diligence, which I'll go over, looking at the financial implications. That's important to us to both care for the cemetery on a long-term basis, because cemeteries are basically here forever, and we want to make sure that into perpetuity it is kept in good shape. And so looking at not only the annual operating, which can have implications for tax dollars, but also what is that long-term ability to care. And then what would be some of those potential next steps and any questions you might have. So going back to the Eden Prairie Cemetery, located for most people just north of the Senior Center, and established back in 1865. So that has been around for a long time, incorporated in 1967. And what has occurred is November 13th, 33 of their members met and all agreed to basically dissolve their organization and pass a resolution to transfer it to the city of Eden Prairie for future care and operation. In terms of comparisons, land availability, sometimes we get asked, what's remaining? And so if you look at Pleasant Hill Cemetery, there are plots for sale, so that's the in-ground. We've got 17 total plots left that people could buy. More people will be buried there because some already purchased plots don't have people buried in them yet, so there'll be more activity there for quite a long time. But also, as you see the photo in the bottom, recently we put in a columbarium. And the columbarium, this one has 59 niches, which when you think about a niche, that is kind of the small locker where up to 2 urns can go into that particular locker. The ossuary is the middle of that structure that right now up to 128 can go in the middle. So that's not an urn, that is the bag of ashes, the satin bag of ashes that goes in there. So it's in the middle with as many other people that fit in there, which is about 128. So that gives you an idea of what's left for us to help and accommodate at that location. At Eden Prairie Cemetery, it's about 5 times the size acreage-wise, and it has quite a few more plots remaining for sale. So on the north section, over about 100, and on the south section, over 600 plots remain. So for people to have the ability to be buried in Eden Prairie, it's there for quite some time. So they provided us with quite a bit of documents for us to go over and review. We did this with the city attorney. We also did this with Tammy and Sarah within the finance department to look at the financials and make some good predictions going forward that I can share with you tonight. They also provided some really good history and documentation of the layout of the property, as well as where and who is buried at the site. So we feel really good about the records that were kept and the ability for us to analyze the financial capabilities. So just to give you a little bit of perspective on financial performance, the past that we looked at, 2018 to 2021, there was as low as a minus 16,000 on an annual basis and as high as a 12,000 on an annual basis. But when you think about that, we have to normalize it for how we do our accounting and also some of the charges that we would charge them, but we wouldn't charge ourselves. The other piece is if you've gone by there over the last couple of years, they've undertaken some pretty good sized capital projects within that budget. So we really had to tease all of that out for us to say going forward, what are we comfortable with this looking like? So in terms of our estimates for the future, we used our city accounting practices just like we would at Pleasant Hill. So no depreciation, which was something that they were looking at within their financials. So that is a little bit of a swing in dollar amounts. Also, when you think of us owning it and maintaining it, we've got some economies of scale that a single owner couldn't have. So imagine it snows out and we're driving down now in a pickup truck with a plow on it to go plow the parking lot at the senior center. We just make a right-hand turn and plow through there. If you own that on your own, you have to contract with a company, which is a lot over time is a lot more expensive. We have people that are really talented with irrigation, and so if there's a leak or a fix that needs to happen, we're not contracting that out. We can do it at a much more efficient cost. And then water charges. We charge them for water. We don't charge ourselves for that. So when you look at our bottom line projected fiscal performance on an annual basis, we believe that it will, in almost all cases, be positive, but it won't be extremely positive. So over the years, we think 5,000 to 10,000, maybe in a good year, 15,000. And the reason it's not exactly predictable is when you look at burials and grave sales, they fluctuate on a year-to-year basis. We've seen that at Pleasant Hills. We see that at Eden Prairie Cemetery too. So our estimates again is that we would be in the positive on an annual basis, but not by a large number. And I'll tell you a little bit more about why that's important to know and think about. So as we've been operating Pleasant Hill Cemetery, we have had two funds basically that get collected when people either buy a gravesite or are buried. Because that cemetery was established after 1905, Pleasant Hill, we by state statute have to have a perpetual care fund, which really ensures the care for these facilities into the far future. And so when you look at this, of our balance of $327,000 for Pleasant Hill, the perpetual care fund sits at $207,000. We cannot touch that. That we can only use the interest on to do upgrades or operating. The part that we can touch and use, whether it's on an annual basis for a capital project, is the operating fund, so the $119,000. When we look at the accounts that the Eden Prairie Cemetery currently has that would come our way, it's approximately $25,000. It's a lot less, obviously, than the $327,000, but again, remember, they just completed a lot of capital projects. We don't think, and working with Mike, we don't think that we're going to need to do any larger capital projects in the near future. So that fund can build. Now it's going to build slowly over time, but we think by the time that we would need to do any capital projects, that fund would be enough to undertake them. So this is, I believe, from our study of the finances and looking forward, this is not going to be something that takes city tax dollars or other funds. This has the ability to operate and survive off the payments that are made for graves and also for burials. So essentially it is self-sustaining, even though it's probably at one of its lowest fund balances that it has been over the years. But again, a lot of that is because of the recent projects that have been done. So just some of the implications of what happens if we were to take it over. We would look at the pricing. Currently, Pleasant Hills, the prices there for graves are less than at Eden Prairie Cemetery. Not by a lot, but we would probably move those up a little bit so that it's more seamless. We have some increased workload, no doubt. Anytime somebody wants to buy a grave, they contact you. You're there. You're showing them the different options that they might have. You're processing those payments. Then, when the burial comes around, there might be a burial for that grave one time. A couple of years later, another burial. You're handling all of the pieces of coordinating that. And so there is staff time that is involved. We have built that into the budget of the Eden Prairie Cemetery going forward. So that positive 5,000 to 15,000 that I was expressing, that does include some staff time to recognize that this will take away from some other activities. We again think that it will make for some more efficiencies. Again, if you were bidding this out for mowing and it was your only site, it would be one price. We bid out for several other sites, and so we think we can leverage some of those economies of scales to get better pricing. And then again, just some of our in-house experts, whether it's with low voltage or irrigation or fertilization, those kinds of things, we think that that can be at less of a cost than if you had to contract that out. And then the eliminating of the ownership confusion. Mike will get calls about Pleasant Hill Cemetery. We get calls about Eden Prairie Cemetery. This puts it into one place, but then also helps people understand why you might select one for the other based on your personal preference. And then long-term care, protection, and preservation. We've been before the Parks Commission several times with this concept, but last night at the meeting, we basically walked through a very similar presentation and asked them for their thoughts in order to pass along to the council members. And I think resoundingly, their thought is we should take it on. And one of the benefits that they brought forward was having the city care for it gives people a lot of confidence that it is going to be well cared for forever, and also that having an outside company or another entity could cause massive price inflation compared to the city generally being very reasonable and appropriate for what people would pay, whether it's for the burial costs or for the purchase of the plot. So that really resonated with them, that the city being a really trustworthy organization to operate and care for this. So next steps would be, there's a resolution tonight if the council feels to go forward with accepting the transfer. We would then work through with the county recorder on some of the more technical sides of things. We have had our park staff, Matt Bourne, especially looking at all the policies and procedures and being in a position to be able to handle if we, March 1, we're being in a position to operate it if the call came for us to make the sale, or to help handle and facilitate a burial, that we would be in a good position to be able to do that. And again, we have a lot of experience doing that with Pleasant Hill Cemetery. So with that, I'd certainly entertain any questions.
Council, questions or comments? Councilmember Freiberg.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I got a couple questions. Now, we're talking a transfer, we're not talking any monetary involvement, it's just transferring over to us, the property? There's no dollar and cent as far as not a purchase?
Correct. It's not a purchase.
Okay.
We, though, incur all of the operating costs and then revenue going forward.
Question I have, if the resolution, if we vote against doing it, what is the downside to that cemetery, both short-term and long-term itself, the way it operates right now?
You know, the board has expressed that they are not interested in operating it for a longer period of time. I'm not sure if that would change their mind or if other people would come forward to try to continue to operate it as a cemetery board. That could be one of the things that could happen. One of the reasons for having perpetual care is that if you go back into the 1900s and even later 1900s, especially some of the rural or outstate cemeteries were becoming abandoned and they would fall to the local jurisdiction and they wouldn't have any funds preserved in order to care for those. And so it would, in some cases, become more of just a care and a burden to them. And so this helps ensure that would not be the case going
so
forward.
Potentially long-term, the possibility of abandonment could happen. And of course, I know it defaults down, like to the city. Concerns I have, obviously, are the people that are already there, buried there. I wouldn't want to see that happen. But I'm also not totally comfortable with the whole thing as far as in my hand, as far as which way we should go. You've looked at all considerations now from what I'm hearing as far as going forward, as far as sustaining it, as far as within the current operations and the budget as it stands now.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
Will this require additional staff on the city's part? Would we have to hire more people?
From a part-time wages piece, we would be hiring more, but it's not substantial. Our budgeted amount within this operating budget is just a few $1,000s.
So not much more of an expense. That's
correct.
Anything? Yes, Councilmember Ryan.
Yep. Just a clarification, Jay. So your analysis show between $12,000 to $15,000 plus and minus when the city started operating. Am I right? Did I hear that right?
No, the minus 12 to positive 15 was over the past several years as it had been operated. And again, that also, that used some money as depreciation,
right.
That we wouldn't calculate in as depreciation. And it also had quite a bit of funds that were expended during those years for some capital improvements too. So if you pulled those out, it would have a much better positive operating performance.
So let me summarize. So if city take over the operation, based on the calculation we have done, we believe it is in a positive territory.
Positive 5 to 15,000 a year.
Around 15,000. That include the staff time and all that included.
Yep, that's all in.
Okay, so that's good to know. The other part that you mentioned is major capital. We don't estimate any major capital investment in near future because they already have done it, right? So the downside, that side is smaller.
Correct, yeah.
Another question is, you said there is 100 to 600 plot, is that the right word, available.
Mm-hmm.
So when that filled up, each plot we sell, right?
Yes, yeah. That's the
to
that is
people.
basically the
and
revenue.
And what is that estimated revenue or estimated cash coming into the city, going into this fund?
Yeah, so on an annual basis, the revenue on sales is somewhere in that neighborhood of $40,000 to $50,000.
Okay.
And then on top of that, in the revenue category, there's also the payment for some of the grave digging itself and other things that go along with the burial. And then in terms of pace, it's somewhere in that 40 to 30 to 40 plots a year potentially that would be sold. So when you think about 700 plus the niches over at Pleasant Hill, it's a lot of years away. And I'm also thinking that we will eventually end up with another ossuarium at Pleasant Hill. In the master plan, there's room for 3 of those there. And that also might be a consideration over at the Eden Prairie Cemetery. As we mentioned when we were talking about having the ossuarium built, that was at a point in time where more than 50% of people in Minnesota were now being cremated, and which was one of the drivers for us. There was much more demand to not have a plot, but to be placed in an above ground scenario. So I think that there's probably likelihood that more demand for that's going to happen, and we would likely accommodate that.
So my thinking is that having that 700 plots available, it's a positive thing versus 0, right? Because there is people need that space and they keep on buying it, and that also help us our operational aspect. And the last comment I have is, I agree with you. I think city operated a cemetery, people feel more comfortable, right? I think, and I think it's a good thing. I don't see the downside any aspect yet, and unless I'm missing something. Operationally we are positive. There is 700 plots out there and it is the board does not want to operate anymore, could fall into somebody else's and mismanage that, and then think about all the people that buried in there at their family, which is a really bad thing. So I think overall, my perspective, I think is the right thing to do and doesn't cost any money to the taxpayers as far as we understand, and improve the efficiency of the city staff and the equipment and so on. So I recommend, I like the idea.
And it could end up being the city's responsibility anyways in the end. So.
All right. Thanks for your comments. So I've been a proponent, Mike knows this, of having the cemetery come under the Eden Prairie City responsibility for 30 years. I've deeply appreciated the Rogers family, and Mike particularly. He has put thousands of hours, I guess, of volunteer time and his heart and soul into that cemetery, as well as his dad, Bert, his, I think it's a great uncle, Harry, his second cousin, once removed, Don Rogers, the first mayor of Eden Prairie. The Rogers name is well deeply embedded into this community, including Rogers Road over by Cedar Ridge. If people live there, it's just it's a great name, but it's integrally tied to this cemetery. So I would even recommend at some point, this is a little bit digressing off the beaten path, but I do think we need some kind of a kiosk at some point, a little something plaque that honors the Rogers connection to this cemetery, because they have been amazing. I do believe it's absolutely appropriate and a positive thing to have the city take control. And I think the one of the best things you mentioned is just the conservation of all of our energy and money, having just in essence one umbrella cemetery, and that we can, whatever we do now with one, we'll just do with both. And I appreciate all the projects that Mike has done to get the cemetery ready, but we'll continue that. My one question would be just how do we have anything formal or structural to continue, and it could be informal, to continue to consult with Mike and keep him involved just for his expertise, not only running that cemetery, but maybe both. But he certainly has the deep knowledge, along with a couple people that have helped out the last couple years, of who's in the ground. And you'd think you'd never lose track of that, but cemeteries do. And I still remember walking it with your great uncle Harry, where he literally had a metal pole that he would shove in the ground to try to see if he banged against something 6 feet down, to try to see if there really was a body there, because there was no marker. And you can't sell really a plot if there's a body there. So Mike's done a great job. I think you have more scientific methods today, but in figuring that out. So there are open plots still up in that old section, and of course they have the south section as well. So I'm thrilled with this. I do think it's important to be responsible to our taxpayers, that this is not a huge encumbrance on us. That being said, everything that we do that's an amenity costs taxpayer dollars. So if we were to look at a park that was coming our way and suddenly, well, we don't want the park because it's going to cost our taxpayers dollars. Well, that's what we do. We supply amenities to our people, and one of those amenities in many communities is to have a cemetery, and to have that as an alternative option for people that want to be buried that way or remembered that way. So for Eden Prairie to have these two areas, there's also a wonderful history component. If you wander through both cemeteries, you'll find all the original settler names there. Of course, we have a history that goes back indigenous behind that, but I just am just thrilled that both cemeteries will be Eden Prairie, and I just can't help but be grateful also to Mike and the Rogers family and the board for all the work that they've done to get us to this point. Okay, so council, I think I heard, Mark, you had still some reservation questions, but are you comfortable voting, or do you want to ask a few more questions, or,
Let me just clarify something a little bit. Okay, where I'm not 100% sold on it doesn't mean that I don't think in principle that it's a good idea, that it is a good idea, because I have a high respect that the people that are buried, they got to be taken care of, and I do understand, that the potential long term. With that in sight, looking at that, I think that outweighs what my other concern was, okay? And I believe I can come up with a vote up on this and go along with it, because the more I'm thinking about it, one side's more important to me than the other. And the preservation of what we have there now and the others tournaments that'll be coming up, yeah, they definitely have to be taken care of. We have done a good job on the other. So I think it's been clarified enough with me.
Council, anything else? Is there a motion then? We can still have conversation after that. Is there a motion then and a second? So would somebody make the motion?
To adopt the resolution? I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution approving the transfer of the Eden Prairie Cemetery from the Eden Prairie Cemetery Association Incorporated to the City of Eden Prairie.
I second that.
I just realized I really didn't get an answer or clarification on the involvement of Mike in the future, but I guess I'm assuming that it will be informal, but he'll be very valuable to us as a consultant of some sort.
Yeah, we could get Mike's nod, but leading up to this, we've been able to get information from Mike and answers to any questions we might have.
Okay.
And so we don't have any consulting money in the budget.
No.
That's very tight.
I mean, I'm sure Mike would like that, but that's not what I'm necessarily asking for. But his expertise, and then I'm assuming there's boxes and boxes of actual paper kind of documents too that gets transferred over. Maybe it already has, but and at the very least it gets into our records areas. But
I mentioned to him last night that we have a truck and some guys that will come and pick up those fire-safe boxes that he has stored at his house too.
All right,
so
wow.
Make sure they're in safe spot. Yeah.
Okay. Mike, this isn't any kind of a public hearing, but you have earned the right if you wish to maybe come up and say anything if you want to. A nice beard, by the way.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for considering this. I want to thank the 150 some odd years of membership going before me that started this place, the 9 individuals from Eden Prairie back in 1863 that got it going and kept it going. The records that I have of everybody that was ever elected to the board for all 150 some years, the paperwork that I have amassed, the history that I have amassed. Jay doesn't know what he's getting into, but there's a lot. I would respectfully request, I would love to be able to help wherever anybody is interested in what I have as an understanding, how I have dealt with people, how to meet the nicest people at the crappiest times in their lives, and how to make them feel better. Those are things that I want to pass on, and I also want to pass on the history. The Eden Prairie Cemetery is a history preservation site. I've dug out a lot. I've got a lot of friends that have dug out a lot of information. As Ron said, the north part of our cemetery, my predecessors, God love them, when a stone went in for somebody, we didn't need that paperwork anymore. So there was a lot of stuff that was gone. I've had very good help over the last couple of years finding hundreds and hundreds of death certificates for people that are there that we didn't know about before. And tying that all together, I want to make sure that that goes forward, because cemeteries are history. And this one is probably the biggest one, not probably, it is the biggest one in Eden Prairie. And I just want to make sure that it goes forward the best way it can. And I want to thank you for taking it over for us, hopefully. Not a vote yet, but anyway. The city's going to get some other things. We have a management program that we have. Jay talked about some of the items that we've spent. Our numbers would probably, except for the projects that we've done the last couple of years, we dropped $74,000 into raising one of the areas, because unfortunately nobody bothered to tell us when they built County Road 4, they raised that road 8 feet. Well, that kind of messed things up for us. We put in a new wall on our north driveway, that another $50-some thousand, plus moving about 60 stones that had to be moved, done, put back exactly in the same spots, pinning those all areas everywhere. Every lot in our cemetery has a pin in it, so we know exactly where everybody is and exactly where every location is. So those are the things that are being passed along. So again, the Eden Prairie Cemetery board, on my behalf, we thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Mike's also a retired Eden Prairie firefighter, and he was on the scene of my house fire. I stood out front, yeah, you remember it well, stood out front on our road with us that night. So.
Oh, geez.
Okay, council, are we ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. All right, thank you, Jay, also. That was a good presentation, and I'm sure Mike knows that it's in good hands now. So, and to Mark's point, it now will be for decades. Well, I guess others too, but decades and decades and decades to come. So, all right, there is nothing, I don't think, to come before the council. Anything else? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
If it's none, then move to adjourn the city council meeting.
Oh, yeah, I just didn't hear it when you turned this way, but you just made the motion.
Okay, move to adjourn the city council meeting tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. This meeting is adjourned.